The Galactic Council Hall was the largest chamber in the known universe. Its walls stretched so high that clouds formed near the ceiling, and lights as bright as suns lit the circular arena where leaders of 1,000 alien species sat in silence. It was not a normal meeting. There were no speeches about trade, no arguments about territory, and no celebrations. Today the air was heavy. Today, fear sat in every seat. In the center of the hall, a massive holoscreen floated, showing a strange pattern of lights, dots and lines that moved in a rhythm no one recognized. The sound was worse. It was not words, not music, but something that felt like a whisper coming from deep inside the mind. Many had already turned off their translators, yet the sound still seemed to echo in their thoughts. The signal had been discovered by deep space listening posts on the edge of the Orion Arm. At first, the scientists thought it was just background, noise from a dying star. But the pattern repeated exactly every 88 seconds, and then, when the Council's best language experts studied it, the computers tried to translate and failed. That had never happened before. Carol, a young alien officer from the Varex Republic, sat in the observer's gallery, watching the leaders shift uncomfortably. He was new to the Council's meetings, sent here to learn and report back to his people. Normally, he would have been bored. But today, he felt something strange crawling under his skin, something that told him this was not just another political drama. At the center podium stood High Speaker Drezul, a tall, insect-like being, with eyes like polished black stones. His voice was sharp as he addressed the crowd. "This signal comes from a planet in the Sol system," he said, pausing after the words. "From the third planet around its star." A murmur spread through the chamber. The Sol system was unclaimed territory, a quiet, unimportant part of the galaxy with no known advanced species. Many thought it was empty. But now, something there was speaking. Drezul continued. The translation systems attempted to process the signal. They produced only one output, a name. The moment he said the word name, the hall seemed to tighten. The air felt colder. No one moved. Some leaned forward. Others leaned back as if they wanted to leave but couldn't. Drezul looked around as though afraid to say more. "I will not speak it. The name is recorded in the archives for Council eyes only." One of the younger Council members, a four-eyed creature from the Othari cluster, rose from his seat. "Surely this is just a harmless planetary designation," he said. "Why keep it secret?" A silence followed. Not the normal, polite silence of politics, but a silence so deep that Carol could hear his own pulse in his ears. Then, from somewhere, near the back, a low, rasping voice spoke. It belonged to Councillor Sareth, one of the oldest beings in the chamber, his skin cracked and pale with age. "Because that name," Sareth said, "should never be spoken. Not here. Not anywhere." Carol frowned. A name? Just a sound? How could it be dangerous? He thought perhaps this was just superstition, or some political trick to keep control of information. But the look on Sareth's face was not the look of a politician. It was the look of someone who had seen something he could never forget. The younger Othari counselor laughed nervously. "Are we children to fear a sound?" And then it happened. The alien's translator device flickered, glitched, and for the briefest moment, the name came through. It was a short word, only 2 syllables, but the effect was instant. The lights above dimmed. The hollow screen froze, and every single elder counselor in the room went still, their eyes wide with recognition or terror. One elder from the Ark's dominion slowly rose from her seat. Without asking permission, she turned and walked out of the chamber. Another followed. Soon more than a dozen leaders were gone, leaving behind silent, shaking assistants. The younger counselor who had spoken the name stood frozen, as if the strength had drained from his body. His voice trembled. What was that? High speaker. Dressel's black eyes turned to him. That, he said slowly, was the name of a world you must never go to. That was the name of the deadliest species the galaxy has ever known. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Carol's mind raced. Deadliest species? From an unclaimed world? It didn't make sense. Dresul looked at the younger members, his voice lower now. Long ago, before most of your empires were born, the galaxy made a choice. We buried the memory of that species. We erased their maps. We swore never to speak their name again, because to speak it is to draw their attention. Carol leaned forward, his hands gripping the railing. Something inside him refused to accept the fear in their voices. But if they were so dangerous, he thought, what happened to them? And why are they speaking now? A tall, crystalline counselor spoke up, her voice like chimes. The signal was not sent by accident. If they are calling, it means they are awake again. The room fell into another deep silence. No one asked what awake meant. No one wanted to know. But Carol could not stop thinking about the name. It rolled in his mind like a forbidden treasure, something he was not supposed to touch, but could not stop himself from wanting to. If the galaxy feared it so much, then perhaps the truth was the only thing worth finding. He looked at the frozen holoscreen one last time. The dots and lines pulsed faintly, as if the signal was alive, breathing, waiting. And in that moment, Carol felt something impossible, a sense that the signal was aware of him, that somewhere across the stars, someone, or something, knew. He had heard its name. Somewhere on a distant blue planet, a pair of human eyes slowly opened. Carol could not sleep that night. The council meeting kept replaying in his mind, the sudden silence, the fear in the elders' eyes, and the strange name that froze the entire hall. It was only a word, yet it felt heavy in his thoughts, as if his own mind wanted to push it away. His training told him to follow orders and forget it, but his curiosity told him to find the truth. And so, in the quiet hours of the artificial night cycle, he decided to go where very few dared to go, the Forbidden Archive. The Forbidden Archive was buried deep beneath the Galactic Council Hall, hidden in a labyrinth of cold steel corridors, guarded by silent sentinels. It was said to contain the most dangerous knowledge in the galaxy, records of ancient wars, lost technologies, and the names of things better left forgotten. Access was restricted to the highest-ranking council members, but Caral had spent years studying the council's systems as part of his observer training. He knew there were gaps in security, old codes the technicians had forgotten to remove. He moved quietly through the hallways, his footsteps making no sound on the soft composite floors. The deeper he went, the colder the air became, as if the walls themselves were trying to freeze away intruders. 2 guards stood at the main archive door, towering armored figures with glowing visors. They were not alive, but machines, programmed to detect any unauthorized presence. Carol waited in the shadows until a maintenance drone drifted by, and in that brief moment when the guards shifted to scan it, he slipped past them into the airlock. The inner door slid open with a low hiss, revealing a vast chamber lined with shelves of crystal data cores. The walls seemed to hum faintly, as if the stored knowledge had its own heartbeat. In the center of the room, a massive console glowed with pale light. Carol stepped toward it, his hands trembling slightly as he entered one of the old codes he had memorized. The console accepted it without question. A cold voice filled the room. Accessing restricted files. Subject, Sol System, 3rd planet. True name, Earth. The moment the voice spoke the word, Carol felt the same chill as in the council hall. The console displayed a timeline, an ancient record stretching back tens of thousands of years. It began with first contact between the early Galactic Council and a young but rapidly advancing species, humans. At first, the records described cooperation, technology exchange, and mutual defense. But within a few short centuries, the tone changed. Words like unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous appeared in the Council reports. The humans had developed weapons far beyond anything in the known galaxy, weapons that bent physics in ways no one understood. They did not use them for conquest at first, but when they fought to end wars completely, leaving no enemy fleet alive. One entry caught Carol's eye. It was marked with a warning glyph that meant never open. Against his better judgment, he accessed it. The screen showed a star map with dozens of red marks. Each mark was once a homeworld. The file explained, in cold detail, how an alliance of the largest alien empires, fearing humanity's rise, launched a joint strike to destroy Earth. They sent fleets numbering in the millions. The humans responded with something called the Black Armada. No one had ever seen ships like them, vast, silent, and cloaked in shadows. The battle logs ended abruptly, but the aftermath was clear. Every attacking empire was shattered within months. Entire star systems went dark. Civilizations that had stood for thousands of years were gone in a single galactic season. The record ended with a single line burned into the file in capital letters. Do not provoke humanity. Do not speak their name. Carol's throat felt dry. The idea of one planet holding such power was impossible, and yet the evidence was here in front of him. He scrolled further, and the next section chilled him even more. The humans did not remain in the Council after their victory. They did not expand their borders. They simply withdrew, sealing their system and erasing their presence from galactic trade and politics. No one had seen them for over 12,000 years. The Council made an agreement to erase all knowledge of them, to keep their names secret so that no one would ever go looking for them again. Carol closed the file, but the words burned in his mind. If the humans had vanished so long ago, why had they sent a signal now? And why had they chosen to send their true name? His thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound behind him, the soft click of metal feet. He turned slowly and saw one of the sentry machines standing in the doorway, its glowing visor fixed on him. Unauthorized access detected. It said in a voice with no emotion. Carol's heart pounded. He had been caught. But before he could move, the machine tilted its head slightly, as if scanning him more deeply. Noted, it said after a pause, and then it stepped aside, letting him pass. Carol hesitated, unsure why it was letting him go, but he didn't wait to question it. He moved quickly back through the corridors until he reached his private quarters. The rest of the night, he could not stop hearing the cold voice of the archive, repeating that word, Earth. He knew now that the signal from the Sol system was not random. It was deliberate. And if the ancient records were true, the entire galaxy might soon remember why that name was never meant to be spoken. Carol spent the next day in a state of restless unease. Every sound in the council hall seemed sharper, every shadow deeper. He could not tell if the fear was his own or if the entire building carried it like a silent sickness. The name of Earth still echoed in his mind, and the stories from the Forbidden Archive refused to leave his thoughts. He needed answers not from cold files or digital records, but from someone who had lived through those days. His research pointed to only one being in the council who might have seen humanity with his own eyes. Councillor Veyron of, the Tal Dominion, the oldest living member of the council and one of the few survivors of the age when Earth was not a forbidden word. Veyron rarely attended sessions now. He lived in a private chamber at the far end of the station, surrounded by caretakers and shielded from the noise of politics. Many thought he was too old to remember much, but Carol believed otherwise. Under the cover of the quiet evening cycle, he approached the guarded quarters. The two sentinels outside gave him sharp looks, but when he said he carried an urgent message about the signal from the Sol system, they stepped aside. Inside, the chamber was dimly lit, filled with the smell of old air and slow machines keeping the counselor alive. Veyron sat in a curved chair, his long, scaled fingers resting on the armrests, his eyes half closed. They opened slowly as Carol stepped closer, and in them Carol saw something no file could show, memories heavy enough to crush a mind. "You want to know about them," Veyron said in a voice like cracked stone. It was not a question. Carol hesitated. "Yes. The archives speak of a war of the Black Armada, but they do not explain why the Council fears even the sound of their name." Veyron closed his eyes for a long moment, as if deciding whether to speak. "You are young," he said at last. "Young enough to believe curiosity is harmless. But I tell you now, it is not. When you speak their name, you call their attention. And when they notice you, there is no going back." Carol leaned forward. "What were they truly? The records say they were like us, flesh, blood, mortal. How could one planet defeat the galaxy?" Veyron's eyes turned distant. "I was there," he whispered. "I was a fleet officer when the coalition of empires decided Earth was a threat. We thought them arrogant, unpredictable. We feared their technology, so we decided to act first. We sent every warship we could build. We believed no single world could stand against that storm." His voice grew quieter. "We were wrong. We never even reached their homeworld. The Black Armada met us in deep space. Their ships were like shadows made solid. Their weapons, I cannot describe them. They did not just destroy our vessels. They erased them. There was no wreckage, no drifting hulls, only silence where entire fleets had been seconds before." Carol felt his skin crawl. "No survivors?" Veyron shook his head slowly. "A handful, enough to return and spread the warning. The rest, gone. We learned later that Earth had not attacked to conquer. They came only to end the threat against them. When their fleets withdrew, they left our empires in ruins, not occupied, not enslaved, simply broken." He paused, his breathing heavy. "That is why we do not speak their name. We swore never to disturb them again." Carol's mind raced. But why now? Why send a signal after thousands of years? Veyron looked at him with an expression that was almost pity. If they are speaking, it means one thing. They have seen something in the galaxy that concerns them. And when Earth is concerned, the rest of us should be afraid. The room felt colder. Carol realized the counselor was not warning him for his own sake, but because the danger was already moving. "Do not go looking for them," Veyron said, his voice fading. "Do not answer their call. If you value your world, stay away from the Sol system." But Carol knew deep in his bones that he could not obey. The mystery was too great, the danger too immense to ignore. As he left Veyron's chambers, he noticed something strange. Two council aides waiting outside, watching him closely. They looked away as soon as his eyes met theirs, but he knew now that others had noticed his interest. Somewhere in the endless corridors of the station, political powers were already moving, perhaps to stop him from learning more, perhaps to use his curiosity for their own ends. Either way, the signal from Earth pulsed on, growing slightly stronger, with every cycle, like a heartbeat calling across the void. And Carol, despite the warnings, knew he would follow it. The following days in the Galactic Council were filled with restless movement, quiet meetings behind closed doors, and silent glances that told Carol the signal from the Sol system had shaken more than just him and Counselor Veyron. Rumors began to spread, whispered in corridors and trading halls. Some claimed the humans were preparing to return. Others believed they had discovered a new weapon, and a few thought the signal was a warning to the galaxy that something far worse than Earth itself was coming. No official announcements were made, but Carol could see the changes. Fleets from several empires were being recalled from distant borders, and civilian transports were quietly being diverted away from the star lanes near the Sol system. Meanwhile, the signal itself was no longer a faint, distant whisper. It was growing stronger, its pattern more complex, almost like a code hidden within a code. The Council's scientists claimed they were still unable to translate it fully, but Carol suspected they were lying to avoid panic. He spent hours in the observation decks, watching the live feed of the signal, trying to make sense of its rhythm. Sometimes he thought he could almost hear something beneath the noise, a deep, steady pulse, like the beating of a heart. His thoughts kept returning to Veyron's warning. If humans were speaking again after thousands of years of silence, it could only mean they had noticed something they considered a threat. But what could threaten a species capable of defeating the combined might of the galaxy? One evening, while Carol was reviewing the latest transmission logs, a coded message arrived in his private channel. It was unsigned, but the encryption was of the kind only high-level council members used. The message was short. The signal is not random. It is a call. They are summoning something. Carol's mind raced. Summoning what? Reinforcements? Ancient allies? Or perhaps something even older than humanity itself? The idea was both terrifying and strangely compelling. He decided he needed more than data. He needed to see Earth with his own eyes. But travel to the Sol system was forbidden by council law, and any ship approaching without permission risked being destroyed before reaching its destination. Still, Carol knew there were ways around the rules. Not all captains cared about council orders, and some would take the risk for the right price. Over the next few cycles, he made quiet inquiries among the shadowy traders and independent pilots who lingered on the fringes of the station's docking bays. Most refused to even speak of Earth, but one, a grizzled old pilot named Jorath, agreed to meet him in a secluded maintenance tunnel. Jorath's eyes were the eyes of someone who had seen too much. He listened to Carol's request in silence, then shook his head slowly. "You don't know what you're asking," he said. "Ships go near Sol. They don't come back. Not because humans destroy them, because they vanish, like the space itself swallows them." Carol pressed him. "Then you've been there. You've seen it." Jorath gave a bitter laugh. "No, I've been close. Close enough to feel something watching. It's not like normal scanners or patrols. It's like the system itself knows you're there. And when it decides you're too close, you get pushed back. You don't even remember how you got away." This only made Carol more determined. He offered Jorath a large sum of credits and promised secrecy. After a long pause, the pilot agreed. "I'll take you as far as I dare," he said. "But past that, you're on your own." Carol returned to his quarters with a racing heart. For the first time, he felt he was moving toward answers instead of just questions. But he also knew that the council would not approve, and if they discovered his plans, they might stop him before he could even leave the station. Meanwhile, in the council chambers, arguments grew more heated. Some members wanted to send a diplomatic envoy to Earth, believing that direct communication might prevent a larger crisis. Others argued that any approach would be seen as a provocation. The older members, those who remembered the last war, remained silent, their faces hard as stone. They had already made up their minds. They wanted nothing to do with Earth ever, again. But Carol noticed something else. Despite their fear, they were preparing. Quietly, almost invisibly, ships were being upgraded, fleets repositioned, and emergency supply lines established. Whatever was coming, they were bracing for it. The signal pulsed again, stronger than ever, and this time, every sensor in the council station flickered for a brief second as if reacting to a sudden burst of power. Carol watched the data spike and realized that the signal was no longer just coming from the Sol system. It was being echoed by hidden relay points across the galaxy, points that had been dormant for thousands of years. The humans were not just speaking. They were broadcasting everywhere at once. And if the relays belonged to them, it meant their influence and reach had never truly gone away. That night, as Carol prepared for his journey, he stood by the viewport looking at the endless sea of stars. Somewhere out there on a quiet blue planet under a yellow sun, the species called humanity had awakened. The day Carol left the Galactic Council station, the artificial lights in the docking bay seemed dimmer than usual, as if the place itself wanted to hide what he was about to do. Jorath's ship, the Starwind, waited in a private berth far from the main lanes, its dark hull coated with sensor-scattering paint that shimmered faintly under the bay lights. Jorath greeted him with a silent nod and motioned him aboard without asking questions. Whatever doubts he had already buried them beneath years of surviving dangerous runs. As soon as the Starwind cleared the station's outer patrols, Jorath engaged the stealth drive, and the stars outside stretched into silver lines as they entered slipstream space. Hours passed in uneasy silence, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional flicker on the navigation screens as their course took them farther from the well-mapped core systems and into the quieter, darker arms of the galaxy. Carol spent most of the journey at the viewport, staring at the endless night and wondering what he would find when they reached Sol. The archives had described a blue planet rich with oceans and life, but it had been thousands of years since anyone had seen it. For all he knew, Earth could be abandoned, ruined, or even transformed into something unrecognizable. Jorath finally spoke as they neared the edge of their destination sector. "From here on, we go slow," he said, his voice low, as though afraid the stars themselves might be listening. "The closer we get, the stranger things become. Instruments start reading impossible distances, gravity feels heavier, and sometimes you hear, 'Things!'" Carol didn't ask what he meant. The look in Jorath's eyes told him it was not a story for this moment. As they drifted closer to the Sol system, the sensors began to register strange anomalies, energy readings that did not match any known pattern, faint pulses of light that vanished when scanned directly, and a background hum that Carol could feel in his teeth more than hear in his ears. When the system's outer planets appeared on the scanners, Carol leaned forward, studying the readings. There was little sign of movement, no obvious fleets, no active trade routes, but the silence itself felt unnatural, like a stage prepared for a performance that had not yet begun. As they approached the orbit of Saturn, the first sign of human presence revealed itself, a black structure the size of a small moon hanging motionless near the rings. Its surface was smooth, absorbing light, and the ship's sensors could not penetrate it. "Relay station," Jorath muttered. "Been here since before my grandfather's time. No one knows how it still works." Carol's instincts told him. It was not just a relay, it was watching them. Past Saturn, the Starwind slowed to a crawl, stealth drives working at full capacity. The planet Jupiter loomed ahead, its swirling storms lit by distant sunlight, and Carol spotted something moving in the shadows above its atmosphere, shapes too large to be fighters, too swift to be civilian ships. Jorath avoided their path, but Carol could not shake the feeling that the shapes knew exactly where they were. Finally, Earth came into view. It was exactly as the old records had described, a sphere of blue oceans, green land, and white clouds turning slowly beneath the sun. But from orbit, Carol could see that the continents were not open and wild. They were shielded. Massive armored domes covered entire cities, their surfaces etched with lines of light that pulsed in slow, deliberate rhythms. The oceans, too, were not empty. Dark shapes moved just beneath the waves, and here and there circular openings revealed the tops of colossal structures hidden under the water. Before Carol could take it all in, the ship's comm system crackled to life, though no hail had been sent. A single human figure appeared on the screen, dressed in black armor that gleamed faintly against a background Carol could not identify. The figure's face was calm, almost expressionless, but the eyes were cold and sharp. "You have come uninvited," the voice said in perfect galactic standard. "You have spoken our name. Now you will learn what it means." Without waiting for a reply, the transmission ended, and the planet below seemed to stir. From the oceans, from beneath the armored domes, and from the shadows of the moon, ships began to rise. They were vast, far larger than the Council's largest dreadnoughts, their hulls black as void, their surfaces broken only by faint, shifting patterns of light. They made no sound, yet Carol could feel their presence pressing against his mind, like a weight. Jorath swore under his breath and gripped the controls. "We need to leave, now!" But even as he spoke, the space around them shifted, and their navigation systems filled with static. The slipstream drives refused to lock onto any coordinates, as if the fabric of space itself had been altered. "We're not going anywhere, unless they let us," Jorath said grimly. Carol's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stand. He had come this far, and he knew turning back was no longer possible. The humans had seen them, heard them, and chosen to reveal themselves. Whatever happened next would decide not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of the entire galaxy. The council chamber was silent as the giant screen lit up with an image that made the alien delegates lean forward in disbelief. It was a planet, a blue and green sphere hanging in the black of space, but it was not just any planet. This was the one from the old forbidden records, the one with a name they never dared to speak aloud. As the image rotated slowly, a quiet voice in the chamber said it in a whisper: "Earth." And in that moment, the air seemed heavier, as if the word itself carried weight. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others kept their eyes fixed on the image as if they could find an answer in its clouds and oceans. Ambassador Vera's mandibles twitched as he turned to the human representative, an older man with sharp eyes who had not spoken once since the meeting began. "Where did you get this image?" Vera asked in a low tone that carried across the chamber. The human did not answer immediately. He simply reached into a case beside him and pulled out something small and flat. He placed it on the council table, and it projected a 3D hologram of a ship unlike anything in the galaxy. It was sleek, black, and enormous. Its design was nothing like the crude human ships the council knew of. "This is impossible," whispered one delegate, a scientist from the Zithar Collective. "No human technology can make this." The human's lips curved into a faint smile. "This is not new technology," he said softly. "This is very old technology. We just never showed you." The words hit the chamber like a shockwave. Some delegates muttered in disbelief. Others stared at him as if he had just claimed to control the stars themselves. Vera leaned forward. "Are you saying this ship is from Earth?" The human nodded once, calmly. "It is older than any of your civilizations. It was hidden for a reason." A murmur spread like fire through the room. Several delegates looked at each other in alarm. One even started to leave his seat. "Before being stopped by a guard, why would you hide something like this?" Another alien demanded. "Because," said the human, his voice turning cold, "because if you knew what Earth really is, you would have tried to take it from us. And you would have failed." The tension grew so thick it was almost hard to breathe. The hologram of the ship floated above the table, its black surface seeming to drink in the light. The human pressed another button, and the hologram changed to show the ship in motion, gliding silently through space before vanishing in a blink. The aliens gasped. "Hypershift. Travel? Impossible!" someone exclaimed. "It's not hypershift," the human replied. "It's something much faster." Vera's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. This technology could change the balance of the galaxy, he thought, but another voice inside him whispered, a warning. If the humans had kept this hidden for so long, then maybe they had other secrets too, secrets even more dangerous. One of the younger delegates finally broke the silence. "What else are you hiding?" The human looked at each of them in turn, his gaze unshaken. "We are not hiding. We are waiting," he said. And that was when the room truly went cold. Waiting for what? Vera asked quietly. The man leaned forward slightly so that the light from the hologram caught his eyes, waiting for the day you all remember what Earth's true name means. And what is that? Vera pressed. The human smile returned. "It means the end of everything you think you know." The chamber erupted in shouts and arguments. Some demanded the immediate investigation of Earth. Others argued that provoking humanity could be dangerous. Meanwhile, the human shut off the hologram, placed the device back into its case, and stood up. "We will not give you more answers today," he said. "We are done here." With that, he walked out of the chamber, leaving a room full of panicked voices behind him. Vera sat frozen in his seat, his thoughts a storm. If the humans were telling the truth, then everything the Council believed about history was a lie. And if that ship was only the beginning, then maybe they had already lost without even realizing it. As he stared at the now dark screen where Earth had been shown, he could almost feel the weight of that unspoken truth pressing on him, and deep in his mind, a question he didn't want to ask kept repeating. What happens when Earth decides to stop waiting? Under the dim glow of the council chamber, the air was tense and heavy. No one dared to speak, for the humans had just revealed something that changed everything. Their representative, a calm and steady figure in a dark suit, had placed a small metal cube on the table. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. "This," he said, "is proof of our heritage, and it carries the true name of our world." The alien delegates exchanged uneasy glances. For centuries, the galaxy had known the blue planet as Earth, a quiet backwater world far from the center of galactic politics. But now, whispers spread that this was not its real name. The cubes. Pulse grew faster, and the Council's sensors picked up strange energy readings, ancient, older than the oldest civilizations present. Some species shifted nervously in their seats. Others leaned forward, curious but afraid. The human pressed a hidden switch, and a projection emerged from the cube, stars rearranging, forming strange patterns, until they shaped a word no one had ever heard. The sound of it seemed to echo in the minds of everyone present. It was deep, resonant, and powerful, as if the galaxy itself remembered it. Those who heard it felt an inexplicable chill, as if their souls recognized something, ancient and dangerous. The council speaker's voice cracked slightly as he demanded, "What does it mean?" The human only smiled. "It is the name of our planet before history began. A name the universe feared and respected long before your empires existed." Murmurs erupted, but quickly died when the human raised his hand. "And with that name," he continued, "comes the truth of what we are." He gestured to the hologram, and the stars shifted again, showing colossal ships, ships larger than moons, hidden deep within the void. They were old, scarred from wars no one could remember, yet still fully functional. "These are not our creations," the human said softly. "They were our inheritance." Some delegates could no longer hide their fear. One insectoid ambassador whispered to another, "This is impossible. Those vessels are from the First Age." The human's gaze swept the room. The First Age did not end. It simply waited. And now, it waits for us. The cube dimmed, but the weight of its revelation hung heavy. Silence returned to the chamber, thick and suffocating. No one moved. It was as if the galaxy itself had frozen in shock. Then, from the far end of the room, an elder delegate of the Thurn Collective slowly rose. His voice trembled, not from age, but from fear. "If what you say is true, then every war, every treaty, every empire we built means nothing. You, your people, were the beginning." The human leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. "Not just the beginning," he said. "We may also be the end." The chamber erupted in a mixture of outrage and terror. Some species shouted threats, others demanded alliances. The council speaker banged his staff to restore order, but it was too late. The galaxy's balance had shifted, and everyone knew it. The humans had not just revealed their true name, they had reminded the stars of something they had long tried to forget. As the meeting adjourned, delegates rushed to their private channels, sending urgent messages to their governments. Military. Fleets were placed on alert, spies were dispatched, every empire began recalculating its future, and in the middle of it all, the human representative calmly walked out, his eyes distant, as if seeing a far greater horizon. In the corridors outside, a young alien reporter tried to stop him for a comment. "Is it true?" she asked breathlessly. "Will you tell us the real name of your world?" The human paused, then shook his head. "You already heard it," he said. "But hearing it is not the same as understanding it." And with that, he vanished into the shadows of the docking bay, where a small unmarked ship waited. Its engines ignited with a quiet hum, and it disappeared into the starry expanse. Back in the chamber, the cube still sat on the table, inert and silent. But those who had been there swore that if you leaned close enough, you could still hear it, faintly whispering the name that had frozen the galaxy in fear. The void beyond the galactic rim was silent, but in that silence a shadow moved. The human vessel that had left the council chamber days earlier was no ordinary craft. It was a messenger, a scout, and a key. It glided through the darkness without, lights, its hull absorbing what little starlight remained. Inside, the lone human pilot sat surrounded by ancient controls that were not designed by modern hands. His fingers traced the patterns carved into the console, runes from a language lost to time. He was not just traveling, he was awakening something. Far ahead, a cluster of stars shimmered unnaturally, their positions forming the same pattern the cube had shown in the council chamber. The pilot adjusted his course, and with each passing moment, the stars began to distort, like reflections on rippling water. Then the distortion broke, revealing an opening, a gate. It was not a wormhole, nor any known form of jump technology. It was a wound in space itself, older than recorded history. As the human ship entered, the galaxy behind it vanished, swallowed by the darkness beyond. The pilot emerged into a graveyard of titans. Colossal warships, some as large as small planets, floated silently in the void. Their surfaces were scarred, their armor blackened, but their cores still glowed faintly, as if dreaming. They were relics of the First Age, the ships of humanity's forgotten empire. The pilot docked with the nearest vessel, a fortress ship, whose name was burned into its hull in the same ancient script. As he stepped aboard, the air was cold and heavy, but the lights slowly flickered to life. Systems hummed awake after millennia of silence. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the corridors, not from speakers, but from the very walls. "Heir of the First Throne," it said, "you have returned." The pilot's jaw tightened. "The galaxy believes humanity is weak," he replied. "They must be reminded." The ship's systems responded instantly, unlocking deep armories, filled with weapons no modern empire could even imagine. Planet killers, starbreakers, and machines that could bend gravity itself. In the hangar bays, smaller craft powered up, their sleek designs alien even to human eyes. As the ship fully awakened, beacons across the graveyard lit one by one, each signaling to the others. It was like watching giants open their eyes after an endless sleep. Across the void, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of warships began to stir. Back in the main galaxy, empires were already moving fleets into position, preparing for the possibility of human aggression. But they had no idea where the real danger was coming from. The pilot sent one transmission back to Earth. 5 words in the ancient tongue. When translated, they meant, "The throne rises again." On Earth, deep within a hidden facility buried. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, an identical cube to the one in the council chamber began to glow. Around it, humans in black uniforms stopped what they were doing and saluted silently. They knew what it meant. The time for hiding was over. In the days that followed, strange signals began to echo across the galaxy. Entire star systems reported, vanishing fleets. No wreckage, no distress calls, just silence. Trade routes collapsed overnight. The council grew frantic, holding emergency meetings, but their intelligence reports were incomplete. Only fragments of information came through. Sightings of enormous black warships, fleets dissolving into nothing, planetary defense grids shutting down without firing a shot. And then came the whispers, the same word that had been spoken in the council chamber, the ancient name of Earth. It was carried by frightened refugees, intercepted by spies, and whispered in the corridors of power. The galaxy did not understand what it meant, but they understood the feeling it brought. Dread. In the void, the pilot stood on the bridge of the fortress ship, now fully awake. Before him stretched the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's inheritance. And this was only the first wave. More ships waited beyond, still sleeping. "Course to Sol?" the ship's AI asked. The pilot shook his head. "No. First, we take the outer colonies. Let the galaxy see their walls crumble before they even know we are at war." The engines roared, and the fleet began to move, vanishing into the darkness between stars. Somewhere in the galaxy, a new war had already begun, though most didn't know it yet. And when they finally realized, it would be far too late. The first strike came without warning. Merchant convoy belonging to the Valari trade syndicate was moving through a heavily patrolled sector along the rim worlds. Their escort ships were top-tier by modern standards, bristling with plasma cannons and shield arrays strong enough to withstand a capital ship barrage for hours, but they never fired a single shot. Sensors recorded a brief gravitational spike followed by total system failure. Shields dropped, engines died, and communications went dark. The Valari captain barely had time to open his mouth before the darkness outside was broken by massive silhouettes, black, featureless warships that moved like predators through water. They made no hails, no demands, and no declarations. Their weapons lit up in silent precision, and in seconds, the entire convoy was reduced to drifting debris. When the sector's patrol fleet arrived moments later, there was nothing left to engage, only a few fragments of metal still glowing from heat, and an empty space where a fleet had been. Reports spread quickly across the Valari Empire, but officials dismissed them as pirate exaggerations. Yet the same thing happened again, then again and again, across different sectors in the outer colonies. By the end of the week, 4 major empires had lost ships without understanding how, or to whom. Their leaders called for joint investigation, but the council received only fragments of sensor logs, and what they saw made little sense. Massive vessels of unknown configuration that seemed to bend light around their hulls, appearing and vanishing at impossible speeds. Military analysts compared them to ancient battle cruisers from human myths, but they were far larger, far more advanced. In secret, the council began to panic. Only the humans on Earth remained calm. In the hidden Pacific facility, the glowing cube projected star maps now littered with crimson markers, targets already neutralized. The man who had been in the council chamber days earlier watched silently, his hands clasped behind his back. His aides brought him intercepted messages from alien governments, pleas for explanations, offers of alliances, threats of retaliation. He ignored them all and only asked one question. "Has the First Fleet linked with the Second?" A subordinate nodded. "The link was established 3 hours ago. The combined force is moving toward the Drevik border." The man's lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. "Good. Let them break the Drevik. First, let the rest watch." Meanwhile, in the Drevik capital, Admiral Korash reviewed the latest frontier reports. His people had fought humans once, long ago, before their exile, and believed them extinct as a galactic power. Now, whispers of black ships brought old fears to the surface. Korash was no fool. He ordered 3 of his empire's largest fleets to converge on the threatened sector. 2 days later, only static returned from all 3. The Drevik homeworld was thrown into chaos. News channels blared conflicting theories: rogue AI uprisings, hidden, super weapons, cosmic anomalies. But on the fringes of the galaxy, in the shadow of dead stars, the truth was unfolding. The pilot from the Graveyard Fleet now stood not on a single ship, but in command of the combined First and Second Fleets. From his vantage point on the bridge of the fortress ship, he watched Drevik warships break formation in panic as human vessels carved through them like a storm through paper. The weapons of the First Age did not need to overwhelm shields. They bypassed them entirely, ripping through hulls with pinpoint, gravitational distortions, or folding space to deliver payloads directly into engine cores. With each destroyed Drevik vessel, another beacon lit in the ancient human network, awakening still more fleets across the void. The pilot gave no speeches, no warnings. The only transmission sent to Drevik space was a single image, the Earth crest, carved in ancient metal, backlit by fire. As news of the Drevik collapse reached the rest of the galaxy, panic began to take root. The Council called an emergency session, its chambers filled with shouting delegates. Some demanded immediate war against humanity. Others begged for negotiations. Some claimed humanity had been forced into action by alien aggression, while others swore the humans had planned this for centuries. The Valari representative slammed his claws against the table and hissed, "It doesn't matter what they want. If we don't unite now, there will be no galaxy left to govern." But even as they argued, the Black Fleets were already moving toward their next targets. The war had not been declared, yet it was already being fought, and humanity was winning without ever announcing its presence. The Drevik homeworld burned for 3 days and nights, its once proud defense grid shattered in the first hour of battle. The humans had not simply come to defeat them. They had come to erase their war power entirely. City after city vanished beneath. Precision orbital strikes that left nothing but molten glass and silence. No civilians were targeted. Yet every military asset was destroyed with surgical brutality. The Drevik High Command attempted a counterattack from deep space, launching their last reserve fleet from a hidden shipyard buried in an asteroid belt. But the moment their ships left, concealment, black shapes emerged from the void, engines glowing faintly like dying stars. The Drevik captains fought with desperation, their weapons flaring in coordinated volleys, yet none found their mark. The human warships bent away from every trajectory, as though the universe itself refused to let them be struck. And when they returned fire, it was over in seconds. The last Drevik dreadnought exploded silently, its debris scattering across the darkness like shattered bone. From his command bridge, the human fleet commander gave a single order: advance. There was no celebration, only the relentless march forward as the First and Second Fleets shifted toward the next objective on the crimson-lit map. An entire coalition sector where 3 alien empires had pooled their forces in hopes of halting the Black Tide. The Galactic Council, now in total crisis, held yet another emergency assembly. The chamber was filled with fearful eyes and trembling voices. Reports streamed in from every corner of known space, fleets disappearing without a trace, fortresses falling in hours, trade routes reduced to fields of drifting wreckage. And yet still no human envoy came forward, no declaration of war was made. The Valari representative slammed a claw against the table and demanded immediate combined retaliation, but the older empires hesitated. They remembered the first age of humanity and the wars that had ended with planets stripped bare of life. They had thought such power lost forever. Now it had returned, sharper than before. In the shadows of the council chamber, a lone observer listened quietly. He was human but not part of the official delegation. He wore no insignia, yet his eyes followed every speaker as if weighing their worth. Finally, when the noise reached its peak, he stepped forward and spoke for the first time. "You still believe this is a war you can win with numbers," he said, his voice carrying unnaturally. Far in the hall, "It is not. You are not facing an enemy who needs supply lines or who must defend territory. They do not conquer to rule. They remove threats." Several delegates shouted over him, but he continued without pause. "The fleets you have seen are only a fraction of what is awake, and not all of them are here." His words left a chill in the air before he turned and walked out, disappearing before security could stop him. In the black between stars, the human fleets arrived in the coalition sector without fanfare. Sensors detected them only seconds before. The attack began. The coalition had gathered over 400 warships, including some of the most advanced dreadnoughts in the galaxy. They had fortified the sector with minefields, stationary plasma arrays, and deep space missile platforms. Confident in their numbers, they expected a drawn-out siege. Instead, the black fleet struck like a scalpel. The minefields detonated prematurely, triggered by invisible distortions in space. The missile platforms turned on each other, as if their targeting systems had been rewritten in an instant. And then the warships themselves began to vanish, one moment present, blazing with weapons fire, the next nothing but expanding clouds of gas and molten fragments. The coalition admirals screamed for regrouping maneuvers, but the humans never allowed it. Every attempt to form defensive lines was cut apart before it could stabilize. Ships that tried to retreat found themselves dropping out of hyperspace directly into human ambushes. It was not a battle, it was an execution. 3 hours later, the sector was silent. The Black Fleet did not linger. They moved on, leaving only wreckage and terrified survivors drifting in escape pods, each with the same message recorded into their comm systems: Earth remembers. The survivors were allowed to be found. The message spread faster than any official report, and in countless worlds, ordinary citizens began to whisper that the humans had returned not as conquerors, but as something worse, judges of the galaxy. And still the fleets moved forward.